On the explosive weekend debate, we talk about the violence and attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh, which is alarming and worrying. Members of Hindu minorities now becoming the target of extremist radicals. The assaults, vandalism targeting the homes and businesses of the Hindu community following the political upheaval is shocking. In fact, they're absolutely shocking acts that undermine the integrity of a nation that is desperately striving for some sense of stability. Uncertainty and fear of persecution are now pushing Bangladeshi Hindus to flee. In fact, many are so desperate to escape the violence, mayhem and arson that has engulfed the nation. But this is not really the first time minorities have come under attack. In fact, there have been several other religious attacks on Hindus in the following decades. Bangladeshi human rights groups, Ain o Shailish Kendra, had reported how at least 3,679 attacks on the Hindu community has taken place between January 2013 and September 2021, including vandalism, arson and targeted violence on these groups. And in the wake of escalating violence with anarchy descending on Bangladesh, the situation is tense with fears of protests being hijacked by extremist elements.
We have gathered here today to protest against the killings of hundreds of minorities in Bangladesh, and we strongly urge the State Department and White House to have lessons learned from 1971 genocide.
We stand against any attacks against any communities based on their race, their religion, or any other discriminatory means.
Well, to talk about this very worrying situation, I have with me Brahmachalani, who's a strategic affairs expert, Chinmoy Krishna Das, president of the ISKCON Pundurik Dham, Bangladesh, Lieutenant General retired Sanjay Kulkarni, former DG Infantry, and we're also going to be joined by Tawfiq Imroz Khalidi. He's the editor-in-chief for bdnews24.com. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Lieutenant General Kulkarni, if I may come to you first. You know, from the UK to US, there is a global outcry over the reports of increasing violence targeted at Hindus. Now, in such a scenario, I wanted to understand from you, what should the Bangladesh army, which is also assuming the role of a final arbiter in national politics and decision-making, do to protect the minority communities? Because it is incumbent upon them to ensure their safety.
Absolutely, Avantika. There's no denying the fact what they should have done. Instead, their silence has in turn actually resulted in more atrocities being committed because they've been on the sideline. You find the Bangladesh police is not in a way effective because they haven't come back, or even if they are in CVs. The army, which it should have done, which some probably people seem to think that there are people trying to protect, but it isn't so. This kind of a thing, Avantika, if I go back to the first partition of 1905, you'd be surprised. Rabindranath Tagore, at that point of time, same month, August of 1905, had distributed Rakhis between the Hindus and the Muslims to ensure that there is kind of, a better relations exist. It didn't happen so, because this kind of a thing, right from the first partition, much that it may have been for the administrative reasons, having Dhaka as a capital and Kolkata as yet another one, but the fact remains that between the Hindus and the Muslims, because then East Bengal had Bengali-speaking majority and Islam as a major religion, unlike the West Bengal, which had a Hindu-dominated majority, but not Bengali as a language. So there has been a lot of problems between these two communities for a long, long time. And now at this point of time, at least for the last 15 years, things are very peaceful. Things are looking much better. The contribution of the Hindus in the 1971 liberation had been taken. The atrocities committed on them in 71 had been acknowledged, and there was a lot that was happening and things were looking up, and that is the reason why we found Bangladesh doing so well, rather being a basket case. It had become a tiger in terms of economic recovery, in terms of its per capita income and everything.
Right.
But army, in this particular case, has done not what it should have done. It has just sitting on the sideline, hasn't helped
And
the
why do you
minorities.
think, doesn't this alarm you that they've not been able to rein in these hooligans or reports coming in of these radicals who are causing such mayhem across the country? What have they been doing so far? Shouldn't they have acted and, cracked the whip on all the kind of violence and vandalism that one is getting to hear of?
Absolutely. There's no denying the fact the army should have done. We have good relations with the Bangladesh army. But at this point of time, I'm sorry to say, the Bangladesh army has not lived up to its reputation. There may be peace, but there's a breach of trust. And that breach of trust between the minorities and the Bangladesh government, I think much that our own Prime Minister has also appealed to Mohammad Yunus to do. Mohammad Yunus himself also seems to feel that, yes, it should be curbed, but nothing much, because he himself speaks of liberation too. And that is bad. That is bad, Avantika. I don't think they have been able to instill confidence in the minorities of Bangladesh as yet. Yeah.
Right. Mr. Chelani, I wanted to ask you, Indian American lawmakers are seeking US intervention to stop these coordinated anti-Hindu attacks in Bangladesh. But interestingly, we just broke this news about Sheikh Hasina breaking her silence for the first time, very directly making a very strong allegation, saying that it's the United States who is behind her ouster. Can we expect the United States to do anything about the attacks on Indians?
It's a very good question. Just look at the reaction in India and the United States to the fall of Sheikh Hasina. Diametrically opposite reactions. In India, Hasina's overthrow has been greeted with alarm, with despair, with foreboding. In contrast, her fall has been greeted in Washington with a sense of contentment. After all, President Biden's administration had openly gone for Hasina's government, despite the fact that a secular regime kept the military and Islamists in check.
Yes.
The US targeting of Hasina's government served as a reminder of the wider divergence of American and Indian interests in India's own neighborhood, including in relation to Myanmar, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. Look at the larger meaning of what has happened in Bangladesh. After Myanmar, which is now racked by an escalating internal war, and that war has been fueled by the Biden administration providing quote-unquote non-lethal military aid to the rebels in Myanmar. Non-lethal aid in the interpretation of Washington includes lethal weaponry. So here is the Biden administration that has fueled an internal war in Myanmar, which is a country with a large land border with India. And now Bangladesh could become the second neighbor of India to be destabilized by short-sighted policies of the Biden administration. So greater turmoil in the region would seriously crimp India's interests. The other thing that is worrying, and this goes to the heart of the discussion that you have initiated, is that Secretary of State Blinken has greeted Mohammad Yunus, has greeted the new interim government, but yet so far he has not said a word on the atrocities being committed against the Hindu minority in Bangladesh.
Yes.
It's a duty of the Biden administration to at least urge the interim government in Dhaka, which is actually a civilian facade for army rule, to stop this communal carnage, which is leading to killings of Hindus, leading to rape of Hindu women, leading to properties and businesses of Hindus being destroyed. And to make matters worse, what's happening is that now, as we speak, since in the last 24 hours, the Bangladesh army has sent reinforcements to Gopalganj, which is the home district of Sheikh Hasina, and also their district with a large Hindu minority, because pro-Hasina protests have broken out in Gopalganj, and the army is seeking to crush those protests and is actually directly involved in new atrocities against Hindus in Gopalganj. It's very unfortunate that the army is now firing on civilians in Bangladesh, especially the minorities, and carrying out atrocities that it promised, when it refused to enforce the lockdown that Sheikh Hasina had ordered, the nationwide curfew, the army chiefs told her that his soldiers will not fire on civilians.
Oh, absolutely.
But now that the mission has been accomplished of causing Hasina's downfall, the army soldiers are firing on civilians.
Indeed. Just kindly stay on with me, Krishna Das ji. The ISKCON temple in Meherpur, Bangladesh, being vandalized and set on fire was so worrisome. It was part of a broader wave of violence that has now targeted multiple Hindu temples. Situation has only gone from bad to worse, and we are also hearing it to be growing increasingly precarious. Could you just tell us how are things now? Do you feel safe, and the others who are in Bangladesh presently?
पहला टाइम टुडे बांग्लादेश अंतर्वर्ती गवर्नमेंट का जो स्वराष्ट्र मंत्री है
जी
ब्रिगेडियर जनरल सखावत साहेब पहला टाइम माफी मांगी है हिंदू कम्युनिटी के पास तो
जी
माफी मांगने के पहला जो गवर्नमेंट का जो लॉ एंड ऑर्डर एस्टैब्लिश होना चाहिए वो नहीं हुआ और मंदिर अटैक स्टॉप हुआ पर्सनल जो हाउस में लूट हो रहा है और बिजनेस सेंटर लूट हो रहा है अभी तक चल रहा है।
मगर कृष्णदास जी मुझे एक बात बताइए, माफी मांगने से जो गलतियां हुई है वो तो माफ नहीं हो सकती है। अभी आपको लगता है कि जो सिचुएशन है अंडर कंट्रोल आ रही है? आपको लगता है कि जो आर्मी है वो जो सिचुएशन को है वो कंट्रोल में कर रही है? आप सुरक्षित महसूस कर रहे हैं अभी?
नहीं और बांग्लादेश का जो पॉलिटिकल लीडर है ऑल पॉलिटिकल लीडर वो हिंदू कम्युनिटी का पास रहने के लिए सबको वार्ता दे रहे हैं। अभी तक बांग्लादेश में पहला टाइम से जो इंडिया पाकिस्तान हुआ वो पाकिस्तान से बांग्लादेश हुआ और बांग्लादेश से बांग्लादेशी जो ये स्टूडेंट और पब्लिक बोल रहा है जे 2024 में देश न्यू स्वाधीन हुआ, नतून न्यू स्वाधीन हुआ,
जी
फ्रीडम हुआ और अभी तक टोटल हिंदू कम्युनिटी और संख्यालघु का लिए स्वाधीनता नहीं मिली और हिंदू कम्युनिटी का लिए ऑल गवर्नमेंट हिंदू सुरक्षा कमीशन संख्यालघु सुरक्षा कमीशन, संख्यालघु सुरक्षा आइन, संख्यालघु मंत्रालय नहीं, इसलिए संख्यालघु का लिए बात करने के लिए अभी तो गवर्नमेंट का पास कौन डिपार्टमेंट नहीं, इसलिए हिंदू लोग आरक्षित है। इसलिए जो ऑल अदर्स कंट्री में जो मीडिया है वो मीडिया का बात बांग्लादेश में जो फर्स्ट श्रेणी जो मीडिया है तो आप इलेक्ट्रिक मीडिया, प्रिंट मीडिया वो थोड़ा न्यूज दे रहा है।
अच्छा।
टोटल हिंदू कम्युनिटी का जो अटैक हेम्पर हो रहा है वो नहीं प्रकाश किया, नहीं
तो वो बताया नहीं जा रहा है। जी कृष्णदास जी, लेट मी गो स्ट्रेट टू तौफीक खलीदी. Now that is an allegation or an aspersion that he's saying that the truth is not being put out by the TV channels or other news outlets. But Mr. Khalidi, any political transition in Bangladesh is going to be extremely tough without addressing this violence on minorities. And the concern isn't really unfounded, because during the previous non-Awami League governments, such as the BNP or the Jamaat Alliance, there was really an increase in attacks on minorities at that time, and this historical context continues to influence the current perception. Do you think this is why the minorities are so afraid of what's to come?
Actually, not just the Hindus or Hindu temples or the minorities have been attacked today. Everyone, anyone who's seen as or perceived to be a supporter of Sheikh Hasina is being attacked.
Yes.
And that it's happening throughout the country, in villages, at union level, village level, district level, sub-district level, everywhere. So it's happening. The caretaker government is saying that since there is no government for 3 days, so we couldn't do anything. Police were absolutely dysfunctional. They were not working. Absolutely. The police were nowhere to be seen. All the police stations were closed. They're gradually coming back. Now what they're saying is both the head of the government and also the de facto Home Minister, the official title is Home Advisor, is saying that it will take some time, and in 3-4 days things will get back to normal. Now the leaders of the community, all these minority communities, are saying that, so who takes care of us in these 3, 4, 5 days? And who takes the responsibility, and for what happens during these days? So that's a valid question. And one of the key questions that are raising, or the key demand they're raising, is that they haven't heard anything from the head of the government, Muhammad Yunus. They want some sort of statement, sort of comment, assuring or reassuring that yes, you'll be taken care of. Don't worry about that. So that's what they're saying today. That's what that kind of statement they make.
Is it true that he has announced? Is it true that he has announced to quit the post if there isn't a stop on these kind of attacks on minorities, and if there is no end to the ongoing protest?
All kinds of demands are being raised, So that's a different issue. I think I've read the report filed by my reporter. They have raised actually 4 key demands. One of them is 10% quota for the minorities in parliament, which is a very valid demand, I would say. Then again, the quota movement is all that led to that in the current situation. But I think that's a valid demand. They have asked for a commission to protect minorities in Bangladesh. They have asked for a separate ministry for the minorities, which is again a valid demand. If you have a religious affairs ministry, you can very well create one. There's a ministry for CHT affairs, Chittagong Hill Tracts, for the tribals, for the indigenous people. So they can well have, they can have. In fact, the remit of that CHT ministry can be broadened to include all the minorities, these issues, for a start at least. So. But the problem is, we as a nation haven't learned how to deal with anyone who is weak, anyone who is disadvantaged, anyone who is a minority, based on their faith or color of their skin, or even their ethnicity. We haven't learned. In general, in this country, we are in a bad shape. We've seen that for the last 50 years or so. In fact, you have to go back to 47 and even before. So let's not go there now. We've seen that in India. We've seen that. I think Pakistan is probably worse, and we're slightly better than Pakistan. And India is also, has seen that on quite a few occasions. So if we want to change that, there needs to be, I think we have to have a cultural revolution. We need to change our mindset. This is incitement of hatred is such a serious crime. It's such a serious issue that needs to be dealt with all seriousness by all the communities.
Okay. Though I think it's unfair to compare this to India in any way. Mr. Chalani, I wanted to understand from you, what can India do about this? Just sit, wait and watch? Because what's alarming is, as you heard right now, that most of these attacks, some say, are not really politically motivated, are actually politically motivated and are not religiously driven. They're attacking people who had pledged their allegiance to Sheikh Hasina or to that government. Now, the Prime Minister has already congratulated Dr. Yunus, and he has urged him to ensure the safety and protection of Hindus. But what more can India do to help the Hindus who are being targeted?
Well, first, in Bangladesh, whenever there's any kind of upheaval, or their elections, the Hindu minority is targeted.
Yes.
This has been the pattern for many years now. The second is that before Sheikh Hasina's downfall and after her flight to India, the large-scale looting, arson, and vandalism that we have seen has extended to systematic killings of people who were associated with her government. This has included Awami League leaders and activists being targeted and being killed. A number of Awami League men have been burnt alive or hacked to death. Very little of this has been reported, but these revenge killings are still continuing, and the attacks on Hindus are being justified within the extremist elements in Bangladesh as, the Hindus are being portrayed as Awami League voters. Actually,
True.
the fact is that Awami League is a secular party.
Yes.
And the opposition is either Islamist leaning like the BNP or aligned with the Islamists like the Jamaat. So the Hindus, by and large, do vote for the Awami League. But now because of this revenge attacks, the attacks on Hindus are being justified to cleanse the system of all the Sheikh Hasina's supporters and backers. But for India, the dilemma is very acute. Look at the dilemma for India. The Indian border forces are stopping desperate Hindus from entering India.
That's true.
I mean, look at the irony of it, that the government in New Delhi is urging the Bangladesh government, the interim government, to ensure the safety of the Hindu minority. But the Indian government is unable to allow desperate Hindus to enter India. India's options are limited because, whatever India does, for example, if India were to take any strong action, it will have negative consequences for Indian interests in Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
It will inflame passions in Bangladesh. It will create things, it will make things worse for India and worse for Bangladesh. So India has to do things quietly, carefully, and cautiously.
Absolutely. And I think that's what they're doing, exercising extreme caution. But I think one thing that you raised was so disturbing, that how Hindus, in fact, are being portrayed to be Sheikh Hasina supporters, the supporters of the Awami League, and thereby they're being attacked. Lieutenant General Kulkarni, I wanted to ask you that such attacks are not only despicable, but they also exploit a very sensitive situation for the extremists' destructive agenda who are waiting to jump into the unrest. Do you feel that the present unrest is also going to trigger fears of terror groups like the Harkat-ul-Jihad Islami, or for that matter, the northeastern insurgent outfits regaining sanctuaries?
Definitely. We've got to be very careful because turmoil in Bangladesh leads to instability in our own northeast. Because, if 60% of Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is a very polarized country, you have great supporters of Awami League, you have a large number of supporters of the BNP, then the Jamaat-e-Islami, again Jamaat-e-Islami, again a lot of huge component of the ISI, which is deeply involved with the Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh. Within the Bangladesh armed forces, also polarization. So under these circumstances, it becomes extremely difficult to see what is it that can be done by us. Because until and unless we are trying to able to convey it in no certain terms, because they would also, in the garb of wanting to push, they would much want, see, the population from 23% has come down to 7.5% of the Hindus in Bangladesh. Even Irshad, whenever he used to address long back, he used to only address 10 crore Bangladeshis. Bangladeshi, his own Bengal Muslims. And he would discard those 2 crore Hindus that were then there. Today they are only 1.3, and the Muslims are far more in number. We've grown to almost 18 crore. So in this kind of a situation where there is a possibility of they pushing those militants across into India, and also ensuring that the Hindus finally vacate Bangladesh, because that's what is the aim of Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP, that push Hindus out of Bangladesh. It succeeds. See, we also have 2 crore Muslim Bangladeshis in India. They must realize that if there are 1.3 crore Hindus in Bangladesh, there are 2 crore Muslim Bangladeshis in India. So
Right.
there are a little bit of
20
pressure
crore.
would have to be put on the government.
I think the number is 20 crore.
Right.
I think the number is 20 crore in India. The Muslim population.
Well,
is
no,
about
it's
20
it's
crore.
a very worrying situation indeed, and the situation is only escalating.
Yeah.
But gentlemen, I'm completely out of time. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you and also getting more perspective, Mr. Chalani, Mr. Krishna Das, who's from ISKCON, and Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, along with Mr. Khalidi. Thank you all for joining us on the broadcast. With that, it's time for us to take a very short break. Stay tuned. News and updates continue.